Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with me, Venus O'Hara. An orgasmic lifestyle is about reaching a climax in all areas of life, not just in the bedroom. Here, we dive deep with expert guests on topics like nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Together, we'll explore lifestyle lessons to help you lead a life that's fulfilling, joyful, and unapologetically orgasmic. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 121 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this Strawberry Moon episode, we discuss sex toys. We speak with Alicia Sinclair, who is a pleasure tech entrepreneur and founder of several luxury brands such as Le Wand, Be-Vibe, and Cowgirl. I also review the book Good Girls Gossip, Find Your Female Power by future podcast guest Tova Lee. The episode ends with a guided meditation with affirmations for connecting with your sexual pleasure. But first, let me share with you my own sex toy journey. Let's talk about sex toys. I actually met today's guest in person several years ago at the Aerofame fair in Hanover. I was going to say Hamburg then, in Hanover, Germany, which used to take place every October. And it was a really interesting fair because everyone from the sector of sex toys used to gather and showcase their new launches. It was always interesting to see what was coming up literally in the market and how sex tech is and was evolving. So I met Alicia several years ago and I have tried her products over the years. I'm a big fan of the brand Le Wand. It's very luxurious. And I actually made a video called The Sex Toy I Used the Most This Summer back in 2018, which has had 500,000 views. And so it's still literally going strong. And I remember a couple of years ago, I saw her in Hanover again, and I saw this product on her stand called The Point, and it was a kind of pebble-like lay-on vibrator that was weighted, and I thought, wow, that looks amazing. And I held it in my hand, and I had this not FOMO, but I think I'm an objectophile where I'm someone who gets turned on by objects. I kind of imagine what that must feel like. But just recently, I actually managed to get my hands on it and test it, and it was absolutely amazing. So sex toys have been a big part of my life for I don't know how long now, ever since I got my very first sex toy. And I think there's lots of misconceptions about sex toys, that they are vulgar, that they are a cold experience, or that they replace partners. And I think all of those things are absolutely wrong. And obviously, different people have different intentions when it comes to sex toys. But for me, I first discovered sex toys back in, I don't even remember when actually, could have been 20 years ago maybe. And it was a time when the biggest selling sex toy in the world was Rabbit. And many of sex toys were battery operated. They were made with this very unsafe material called jelly, which was porous, which means you can never fully clean it. So imagine you can even get infections from sex toys without having to sleep with strangers. You can get infections. Isn't that crazy? Because this sector is not as regulated as it should be, unfortunately. So anyway, I think I was coming out of a relationship and I wanted to stop some toxic patterns that I'd identified in my life where I was choosing partners that were amazing lovers, but toxic partners. And I think a lot of people, when I explain this, they can relate to it. When you find someone with whom you have this incredible electric connection, but then there are, a lot of arguments, and those arguments actually fuel the better sex. It's a very toxic loop, and it's hard to kind of get yourself out of that. But eventually you kind of burn out from that dynamic, or it gets to a point where the toxicity is so bad that self-preservation kicks in. And that's what it was like for me. So I actually left this guy, went to live with a friend. And I remember once we were actually binge watching Sex and the City. And then there was that episode when Charlotte and all of the rest of them, they go to a sex shop and they find the rabbit. It's like, oh, it's so cute. I think it's called The Turtle and the Hare, this particular episode. It's in season 1. I haven't actually watched the whole of Sex and the City in order. I've just watched random episodes, but when I watched it later, when I've become a sex writer myself, I found it quite interesting. And of course, I absolutely love New York as well. So, and I kind of identify with, living something and then it becomes my art. So I do that a lot. And if you're interested in that, check out my Substack where my biggest juice is being expressed. So going back to getting my first sex toy, I remember going with my flatmate and we said, let's get some sex toys. I thought this is what I need to kind of stop this pattern of going for guys who are offering me great sex but emotional toxicity. And so we went to a sex shop and we asked for advice, because the thing is, when you're new to this, I remember that feeling of just walking in and seeing all these products and not knowing what to buy at all. That's where reviews are so important. That's how I help people with my reviews. And the review is not about how much I like it. It's about what it does and who it's for and what it's for. So you have to kind of tap into, is this for me or not, just from your own intuition. I remember reading years ago in a magazine called Scarlet in the mid-2000s that someone was making sex toy reviews. And I thought that would be an amazing job. This is way before I even had my first sex toy. And look at me now with 1,000 sex toys. But anyway, going back to the very first one, I remember we bought the same toy. We both went home. We both went into our rooms. And I just tried this toy and I just didn't do anything. I don't know what I was expecting, really. I wanted it to kind of scratch an itch that I didn't know how to scratch alone. And just nothing happened. And it ended up being a kind of very frustrating experience in the end, because I wanted to achieve some kind of relief, pleasure, and I felt frustration, which is kind of annoying. That's the opposite of what I wanted. And I remember going to the sofa and waiting for my flatmate to emerge, and she was in her room for hours and hours. And she did finally come out as if she was in a trance and said, "Oh my God, it's amazing." And I was thinking, it was my idea. And I just thought, am I doing something wrong here? That's the thing, when things don't quite work out for you, you might think immediately it's your fault, and that's some kind of default that we really have to change sometimes. So what I learned was, over the next 6 months, every time I was a bit horny, I would just try to just try and experiment with this toy. Not trying too hard, but just seeing if I could just feel some relief. Nothing happened. But I was persistent. I persevered. And then one day, months later, I was using it with a new partner who was toxic in a different way. That's another story. And then suddenly, boom, this orgasm came. And I think it became at that point because I wasn't really expecting anything. And I was just kind of tapping into the pleasure and just feeling comfortable with it. And then it just completely blew me away. This orgasm was so special because I gave it to myself. And I think it's the first time that I've never been able to actually give myself an orgasm through masturbation. I've had nocturnal orgasms, or even if I start touching myself, I just kind of get bored. I think it's very important to touch yourself. But I was over reliant on partners who were sometimes not the healthiest ones. So that really started me off on this whole journey of sexual pleasure and looking to myself as a source of my own sexual pleasure. And that kind of helped me to make better decisions in terms of partners. So it's not really something that replaces partners, but it's something that replaces bad partners, or partners that you might just be choosing out of not the best criteria because you're super horny or super lonely. So I could kind of take care of that need on my own terms. And then for something else the sex toy cannot give you, which is love, affection, support, hugs, caresses, then obviously we're looking to humans for that, of course. And for me personally, I don't tend to use sex toys when I'm with a person. I'm all about just leaving them in the spare room, and I just want to really connect skin on skin. But I'm not against it. I don't think it replaces. I think it can enhance, especially if you are in a long-term relationship, you're looking for some kind of variety. And also with an ex-partner of mine, we used to try male sex toys quite a lot. And it was really interesting to see the shoe on the other foot and just be the observer and just watch him. And I really enjoyed that, especially times when I was tired. And that's, being tired is usually an excuse, not always an excuse, but a reason to avoid sex or just not want sex. Whereas being tired was an excuse or a motive to actually indulge in sex toys and just watch the other person and still enjoy it, but not be an active participant. So that kind of helped to bond or continue that sexual connection in times when one of the partners wasn't quite up to it for whatever reason. So I found that really insightful and a great added value to my own sex life. So this I actually went to the sex toy fair in the Aero Fame fair in Hanover has kind of disappeared because another company started hosting it in Barcelona, which is amazing for me, which means I don't have to fly anywhere. I can sleep in my own bed and just walk down half an hour to this trade fair and then see all my clients. That was an amazing addition to my experience in May after my amazing holiday in the US, seeing all my clients in my city. And it was very strange this year. I feel that this year was more about connecting with other professionals as opposed to focusing on product launches. And I think in the air, there's a lot of fear about the Trump tariff situation because many of these companies, they are reliant on China. So there's a lot of people don't really know what's happening as well. So that's kind of the thing. And and what was really cool was I actually got to see Alicia Sinclair, and this was a couple of weeks after I interviewed her as well. And she had these kind of realistic phalluses on the stand, and I was like, "Oh, look at that!" And that, I must confess, that's the type of product I do not review. I get a lot of petitions for that. A lot of people, especially in China, they want me to review realistic dildos, but I don't do it because I think it's social media can get confused and flag it and think it is a real one because they look so real. But there was a lineup of different sizes and girths, and there was one that I thought, yeah, that's the one. I kind of gave it a cathartic squeeze, and I just said to her, I want this. I want it on my altar. I want to call in something like this. This is my ideal shape. So anyway, now I have it standing proudly on my bookshelf, which I have an altar on there. And it was funny because the other day I was actually about to interview someone for my podcast and I could see it in the background. I thought, I better hide it. So so that's something I want to do a ritual with, which I might do now for the full moon or maybe the new moon next time. And it's just something that's quite nice to squeeze, to be honest. I'm not sure if I'll ever use it because it actually has been on a trade fair stand, so many people have squeezed it. I will clean it, of course, physically and energetically, but it's an amazing addition. And also I did eventually get to try this toy called The Point, which is this weighted vibrator, and it is amazing. So it was really fantastic to connect with Alicia Sinclair, and I can't wait to share this conversation where we're going to share a lot more about our pleasure products industry and sex tech. What if your pleasure was the portal to your power? My new book, Orgasmic Manifestation, Transform Your Life with Your Sexual Energy by Venus O'Hara, is your guide to using desire as a tool for abundance, purpose, and deep self-connection. Your orgasm is more than a moment. It's a message, a manifestation, a mirror of your limitless potential. Available now on Amazon. Link in the show notes below. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We speak with Alicia Sinclair, who is a pleasure tech entrepreneur and founder of Le Wand, Be Vibe, and Cowgirl. Alicia Sinclair, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Sure. I am the CEO of COTR, which is the parent company of 3 sex toy brands. Be Vibe, which is a butt-focused brand. Le Wand, which is high-end, sort of premium, elegant, aesthetically pleasing vibrators and other, toe-curling toys. And the Cowgirl, which is our sex machine, writing style, humping sex toy products.
Okay, very interesting, very different. So what inspired you to follow this path?
Well, this is my 23rd year in the sex toy business. And I started COTR about 10 years ago. And, to really, sum up, the short and sweet of it is I got fired from a company that was acquired by a private equity group. And I was sort of trying to decide what I wanted to do, if I would stay in the industry or move on. And I had, two really good friends reach out and say, we should start our own company. And we looked at what we thought at the time, so this is a decade ago,
Mhm.
where were there gaps in the marketplace where there felt like, there was room for improvement and where we could really make an impact. And those were the three categories that developed as brands and really became where we put our footprint within the industry.
So what does COTR stand for?
Code of the road.
Okay, I was curious.
Yeah, we are all like big music fans, and there's like when you're like a roadie, there's sort of like a code of the road. And so we
Okay.
just like tossed it out as like a fun corporate name, and then it always makes me giggle because I think we put very little thought into the
Mhm.
fact that people would ask us what the acronym stood for. Yeah,
Oh,
but there
cool.
you go.
Amazing. So which was the first brand that you developed of the three?
B Vibe. Yeah, B Vibe
Okay.
was our first brand, and if I'm being really honest, is my favorite brand.
Mhm.
Just because I became a certified sex educator at the time that we began the company. And it really, I infused all of this like passion that I had to bring sex
Mhm.
education into manufacturing and development. And we were really able to marry that into B Vibe. And I think you'll see,
Mhm.
like, if you've been on our, what we now call Anal Academy,
Mhm.
there's podcasts, there's blog articles, there's videos, everything, there's, QR codes on all of our products that, teach folks how to use the products and, how to talk about the products. And yeah, so B Vibe was our first brand, and it has, kind of like my heart is really in that brand because of the way that we were really able to make an impact
Mhm.
in the way people looked at education,
Mhm.
and accompanied with a toy.
Mhm. So how has that influenced your work then, being a certified sex educator and an entrepreneur? Do you think it's really helped you in your entrepreneurial journey?
I do.
Mm.
I think it allowed me to, it was important for me to feel like I am doing something good in my
Mm.
work, something that's meaningful, something that has purpose, beyond, business. And so that, ability to kind of combine personal passion with my workplace, it has fueled me, and I think it's presented a lot of unique opportunities that are outside the box,
Mm.
seminars, sort of being invited to educational and maybe therapist type spaces,
Mm.
being on podcasts that are sort of out of the box, or being able to work with brands that I think also were maybe a segue,
Mm.
into education, like say like Seekus and many other folks that maybe wouldn't naturally think to pair with a sex toy company, but because we were so aligned in our missions,
Mm.
made sense.
Mm. I think for me, my favorite brand of yours is the Le Wand.
Well, product wise, I'm gonna agree with you because the wand is my go-to. So I definitely agree with you from that standpoint.
Because there's one that I think it has a 3-hour battery time or something, the one I tried a few years ago, and it's kind of crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a long time. That's many orgasms in 3
many,
hours.
many.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
definitely.
I think I charge it and I put it in my nightstand, and I don't know if it's what it says about me or what it says about the wand, but it seems like it lasts for months, and
Oh,
then when it
wow.
dies, I'm kind of surprised,
Oh,
and like,
wow.
whoa, like because the battery holds for so long.
So tell us about Le One, because it's a very classic design, but it with modern advantages, let's say, or modern perks. So it's like the classic design and rechargeable, which is so rare these days, because there used to be, the strong wand massages used to be the ones that plugged into the mains. Mm.
Yeah, and it's so I'm a wand person. I just have always, I think even my first sex toy was like a a repurposed, back massager from like a
Mm.
pharmacy
Mhm.
back in the day. So I've just always been a wand person. And, looking at wands in 2014, 2015, they were mostly they kind of were medical looking devices.
Mhm.
And definitely didn't feel like any of them, I can't 100% accurately say it, but definitely didn't look like a woman had any touch in the design of those.
Mm.
And so my goal was really to look at all of the key features that I loved about all these different wands, maybe flexible neck here, smooth silicone head there, long lasting battery in this one, a wide range of vibration strengths in another, and pair them all into a product that felt something more like a modern beauty tool. So that was really where I looked at for inspiration for the packaging and for the aesthetic look, is what do high-end beauty tools look like? This is what we're sort of paying an equivalent price, right? I feel like there's something that we use kind of around the same amount of time.
Mhm.
So I wanted them to feel like a segue from other beautiful things that you use in your home to make you feel good. And that's, sort of making this one product aesthetically pleasing, giving it all of the features of all of these like high quality different wands, and yeah, making it feel very feminine.
Mhm. And also the name is very elegant, having a French name, Le Wand. So how do you think elegance and luxury actually helps destigmatize pleasure?
I think, again, like looking to my again, I'm going to sort of age myself, but when we used to go back into sex toy stores, there were very graphic images of women on them. The materials were pretty low quality. They often smelled very strongly. And I think that represents like how you felt when you went into a store and you looked at those
Mm.
products and you bought those products. It didn't make me feel sexy. It didn't make me feel like it made me feel like my experience was dirty, put it that
Mm.
way, dirty, trashy. And so I think having a sex toy that feels like a natural part of your everyday life, it blends
Mm.
with other beautiful things that you own and looks like something, that you're kind of like has a nice design touch to it, and it has giftable packaging and it has a reputable warranty, and it just looks like a modern electronic.
Mm.
I think that destigmatizes it because it feels very natural with the other products that you're buying and
Mm.
paying for about that same price point, right? You have the same expectation out of it. It fits into your life the same way. It's a tool. And like I always say, like you can brush your teeth manually or you can use an
Mm.
electric toothbrush. To me,
Yeah.
it's
Mm.
it's not really that much different.
Mm.
And I feel like that making it blend with your home and feel like other electronics that you buy alleviates that sort of stigma that is
Mm.
often associated with sex toys.
So what's your production process like? Do you get an idea? Do you work with other people who are thinking up the next product? I mean, what is it? What's the process like? Because it's interesting to have. I was talking to someone else earlier today, actually, from the industry, and they're talking about a certain company. They were just all men, all engineers, and they just
Right.
didn't have that female intuition that's required for a toy that women are using ultimately. So, obviously, with you, how has that influenced the design and the production and development
Yeah,
process? Mm.
I think it's really important to have people in the room
Mm.
that are users of the products.
Mm.
I think that's like, so for example, if we're developing butt toys, we want people who use butt toys to be involved in
Mm.
that process. And a variety of different kinds of, like there's lots of different kinds of people that use butt toys. Same thing with wands, and I think, with in our design process, there are many different groups of people involved.
Mm.
So from origin of idea, I'm not always the only one who has a good idea. There's other folks in development or people who go to shows, or we receive customer service or like buyer feedback. So ideas can come from so many different places, and then it may start. It's a pretty long process, as with kind of designing anything. You start with one idea, then maybe that gets sort of within a core focus group, And then that becomes like what functions are practical, what size is, like then we 3D print, and then it goes through another round of 3D print, and then it goes to like hand sampling, and
Mm.
then from there it goes to like the next process of testing, like physical testing, and then there's a person that really just does like the tech angle of it. How do the
Mm.
motors sound? Like, how do they function? Does the battery operate within, the parameters of our, so there's all these different steps in the process. And then, it gets to a sort of a final stage before production where maybe we have salespeople or even buyers sometimes feed in, and
Mm.
that might be like, we don't think this has a place within the collection, or we do think this color would, or this function is important. So
Mm.
I'd say it's from beginning to end, there's lots of different folks involved in that process.
Mm.
Sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's really complicated. Like some of the items, like for example, the P Spot snug plugs that we came out with. Fantastic item, just won a Red Dot Award. But that was, I think we went through like 4 rounds of design before that actually like just got to the part where we made a hand sample. So it's like the idea can be there, but the shape doesn't work,
Mm.
or the neck isn't long enough, or so. But yeah, I think it's a lot of trial and error. And then as you get more time under your belt with anything, you
Mm.
have more experience and you understand. You can work a little faster, put it that way. And as a team, as we're longer as a team, we can pull bits and pieces of all the different things that have been successes or losses,
Mm.
and use that to accelerate our production and development time.
And how do you see the industry's changed over the time you've been working in it?
Um, well, in the olden days, I just feel like people went to China and kind of sourced, what was openly available.
Mm.
And there wasn't a big emphasis on, I think, quality. People just bought. There wasn't any real thought into like the long-term lifestyle cycle of a product. And then, different companies entered the market, I'll say like sort of pioneers of high quality, be that
Mm.
like Lilo or Jimmy Jane and, WeVibe, and using better materials, making products rechargeable, like teaching people about the dangers of phthalates. All of those different things, I think, imprinted the industry. And then from that, now you see, I think, higher quality products, most of them rechargeable, um, mostly body safe. Like I think there's been a huge difference. And also the packaging,
Mm.
the way people talk about products, what adult stores feel like. Maybe two things happened at the same time, right? DVDs sort of disappeared
Mm.
from the store. So enter, as a retailer, you had to be focused on couples and women.
Mm.
So also sort of a manufacturers had to become more aware of who their client was. And I think we saw, especially in this past 10 years, a lot more women
Mm.
in leadership roles and or just involved in the industry. At the same time, sex education, I think that's another huge push, right? There was really not that many sex educators. I want to
Mm.
say 12 years ago, 13 years ago. I mean, I think
Mm.
there was like Carol Queen. That's like who
Mm.
I knew, and now I think there's a lot more people. If they're not in some way certified or educated, there are like really well known, look at yourself, for example, like well known educators in our business. So
Mm.
I think there's been so many shifts. And then like from a business perspective, it's not really just small mom and pops anymore.
Mm.
There's a lot of really big giants dominating our industry, these huge multi-million dollar companies. Um, which I guess there were like the big four, what we call them here
Mm.
in the United States. But now
And
there's
who are the big
companies even
four?
much bigger.
I'm curious.
It was at the time Topco, Doc Johnson, Cal
Mm.
Exotics, and what's the other one? Naswalk. Those were the big
Okay.
four.
Oh,
And like
wow.
how not to say they're not big anymore, but it's definitely shifted, right? I would
Oh
I
my God,
would
yeah.
guess,
Mm.
Love Honey Group,
Mm.
um, Big Giant Ice.de,
Mm.
these are, Lilo, big, huge
Yeah.
companies that kind of came out of, not, I want to say nowhere, but within the past, 15 years have drastically shifted the business in our industry.
Definitely. One trend that I've noticed over the last few years is that I was in a hardware store wanting to buy a bikini trimmer, and I went down to the bikini trim a bit. Then I saw all these sex toys and I was blown. I just thought it was really funny. So I made a reel about it and I put it on Instagram. And then I was so surprised that this was happening. This is in Spain. That a lot of sex shops here were really angry that these products were available so freely, because obviously the service you get
Hmm.
in a hardware store is not the same as in a adult store, because that they know they have the staff, they know their products, they can give
Sure.
you tips, whereas it's very impersonal. However, I can see how it's appealing to a different demographic, and but the people from the shops, they were thinking, oh, this is really, it was like almost stepping on their toes. It was very they didn't welcome it anyway. So how do you feel about this? How the distribution of sex toys now, because it's going beyond the shops, it's becoming more available in different types of, even in here in the Europe, in pharmacies and chemists, you can buy
Yeah.
um in supermarkets, you can buy vibrators
Yeah.
and stuff.
Target,
Mm,
Walmart,
mm,
CVS. I mean, I guess there's really two schools of thought. There
mm,
is, like what you just mentioned, which is, people feeling, maybe like business might be taken away from them.
mm,
I would personally be more if I were a retailer, be more concerned about direct to consumer business,
mm,
right? Like where margins are,
mm,
it's easier to discount. It's like, they have a wider breadth across, different
mm,
regions. But, yes, that is one point of view. I think another point of view is that it can be, I would say, like a gateway product. What I
mm,
mean by that is you come into a store and you buy something that's pretty generic. Like most of the products in there are simple. You're not going to get anything other than a basic rabbit, helical balls, a wand, maybe a
mm,
penis ring. Like they're not,
mm,
in my opinion, like you or I or anyone else who's maybe had a sex toy or two wouldn't get excited about anything that's offered. So I
mm,
think what could be also another way to look at that is it's a first step in getting somebody to try a sex toy.
mm,
And maybe they like it and then they want to go to a specialty shop. And I
mm,
think like another way is like you can kind of compare it to buying many other things in Target, right? Like you can buy a bike, but if you're going to like race bikes or you really want to do like long, or like kind of, you're going to go to a specialty bike store to buy it.
mm,
So I think you can get a taste for it and then move on beyond that to a place where an educated person is going to be able to sell you a much wider range of products, like, fetish gear and high quality lubricants and, stainless steel products and, vibrators that have two or three functions and wands that are really powerful and larger sizes. That's like, if you really like sex and that is something you're interested in, like maybe you're going to gravitate
mm.
and going beyond. Like you said, it may also many times be a customer that's too embarrassed or never or will never go into a sex shop for a number of different reasons.
Absolutely, definitely. I didn't even think about the range. It's so true about the range of products being very different. So why is pleasure important, do you think? I mean, have you obviously encountered maybe resistance to what you're doing? Because I mean, in our industry, we know we're doing something good, but like not everyone thinks the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a very religious. I mean, I grew up very religious, so I I get it, I understand it.
Yeah, me too, me too.
You know, yeah,
Yeah.
based on your belief system,
Mm.
sure, we could all be burning in hell. But I mean, why is pleasure important? I mean, I think it makes your body feel good.
Mm,
And I'm all about like feeling good. I'm
mm,
about doing things that like naturally feel good to my body and like bring me pleasure. And this is like a pretty simple way that it's inexpensive. It sort of like never lets me down.
mhm,
And it does a lot of, I think, like I'm a person who's super interested in, just like the way the body ticks and like what makes it healthier. And masturbation and sex in general, they have so many health benefits.
mm,
I don't really have any like negative, like as long as it's consensual and like wanted, it doesn't bring negative, like,
mm,
and I also think from a perspective in relationship or even with yourself, building intimacy, like being comfortable with your body, learning about your partner, existing in this place with another person where you're bringing them this type of pleasure.
mm.
There's only so many ways you can experience these feelings and sensations. and
Mm,
I don't know, I feel like pleasure is awesome. Like it's just
mm,
like, why would you deny yourself something that's like so obviously like it's like a gift? I feel
mm,
like so much of our life is hard,
mm,
requires a lot of effort. And I feel like sex, like, feels
mm,
good to me, like you get the
mm.
right products and you're in the right mindset and you can have a really good time, over and over and over again. And it, you know, seems like a pretty beneficial, like awesome thing to experience.
Definitely, definitely. So tell us about the, we've been hearing a lot about the tariffs lately. How is this affecting the industry?
Oh, I mean, at present, we're at 145% tariff to bring
Mm,
products in from China to the United States. So it really, I guess, depends on each company's unique situation.
mm,
We're in an inventory situation where we have a long runway. Um, but, you know, it will ultimately depend on what happens long term, I suppose. Like if
mm,
there's a resolution where tariffs are more manageable, we could sort of continue or go back to, I would say, like business as usual. If that doesn't happen, and regardless, we'll all have to make some important decisions because this may not be the first time we experience this, is to look at maybe reshoring the production of products into the United States.
mm,
Manageable. It will take time. There are some easy wins, right? Like
mm,
poured silicone and items like that. So those
mm,
items might just be brought back into the United States and you will see, production, reestablished here in those ways. There's
mm,
also other countries that do have production facilities, and in at least in our company, we've been researching and seeing where else we can move the production of our products. Our products require a lot of machinery and high quality,
mm,
capability. So it's not a short process. It's not something that's like easy. It will require, a lot of work. That may be a 6 to 12 month plan. But I can imagine many other companies are doing what we're doing,
mm.
looking for alternative countries to manufacture products in, including their own.
Wow.
But that's just like, sort of a lot, those are long term. In the short term, you probably just won't, some items will go out of stock.
Mm,
People cannot afford to bring them in right now. The cost of goods, there's surcharges. These messages have already been circulating since the beginning of April. Surcharges being some companies adding them on immediately, and the
mm,
cost of their goods going up pretty significantly. And that will, continue until there's some relief in that way.
wow.
So I think it's going to be a mixed bag, if I'm being really
Mm,
honest, right? We're also kind of like, everyone I think is going to have to decide based on their inventory position, how much margin they have, how much they're willing to give up, how much they can, sort of absorb into their like larger company. But yeah, profit margins will go down.
mm,
You'll see that, yeah, it's
mm.
hopefully it's
Yeah.
a short term problem. Yeah, but I think all those things will happen, and based on this experience, it's like COVID. It happened, and there are some long term effects. Right, people
Mm,
will probably always wear masks on planes,
mm,
and so I think that this event, the tariff event, will mean that there are companies that will reshore products into the United States, the manufacturing, because to avoid the potential of this happening again in the future, and we'll look for alternative countries to manufacture in.
wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
process. What's your favorite part of the process of creating sex toys, and what's the part that brings you the most joy? Like the feedback when someone's enjoyed the product, or
Yeah, the customer service messages are
uh, yeah.
usually pretty epic. Yeah. Those are usually my favorite. Not when somebody's put the travel lock on and can't figure out how to get it off. No. But yeah, definitely, definitely those are the rewarding messages. I mean, I love
Mm,
going to a trade show and like presenting
mm.
a line
Oh,
and
really?
feeling really excited about all of the work that we've put into it and being able to see the response of buyers.
Mm,
It's pretty cool to go into a retail store and talk to staff who love selling our products and to
mm,
see the way that they've put our brand in their stores. I mean,
Mm.
all of that is, it's very rewarding, to like talk to people about their experiences, either selling, using, merchandising. Like it's just really cool to watch something you made and like see it in the real world.
Definitely in the impact. Absolutely. Especially because it's
Yeah.
joyful, as you said before, it's like you're giving pleasure. But one thing I've always wanted to try that I haven't tried of yours, you remember you showed me this lay-on, which was really heavy, it was metallic,
Oh,
and I
the
was
the
like,
point.
oh my God, I want to try that.
Yeah.
I just imagine because I have a weighted blanket. So I like, heavy.
Uh-huh.
It's very comforting. So I can imagine. Can you describe this toy to us and why it's so special?
Yes, it's, think about like almost like the size of a palm.
Mm,
And so it feels almost like a smooth pebble, if you will.
mm,
And it's called the point because it rounds and it just has like a little point on the end. So I say it's sort of like the tip of a finger. And
mm,
it can fit really nicely, obviously in the palm of your hand, as I mentioned, but also if you think about like a lay on vibe. So it
mm,
fits like really nicely in between two bodies.
mm.
Also very, sort of very easy to hold, like, in like on top of a clitoris or a vulva. And it's got that weight. So the Chrome collection, which we call it, I don't know if it's, I have to check how it's listed online. They're called, I think they just call them mini vibes, but
Mm,
they're made out of chrome steel. And I'm just a
mm,
huge fan of weight. I like love weight. It's like hidden in so many of our different products. I think it's
mm,
like, if I will, I always call it like a lazy person's sex
mm,
toy, because just the feeling of weight, like you said, like a weighted blanket, like on your body, like there's
mm,
something to that, the pressure of it that I
mm,
think just adds another layer of pleasure.
mm,
And so it's got this like nice weight to it that you can also cool, you can heat, it warms to the body. It's slippery on one side and it's got, from the metal, and then it's silicone on the other side. So it has like a smooth drag. So yeah, you can use it you can use it like as an extension of your hands, a sort of like a massage type stone. It's
mm.
really lovely. I'll bring one for you
Oh, please.
or yeah, you'll have to tell me what you
Please.
think.
I'm sure I'm gonna
You're
love
like,
it
I
'cause
need this toy. Yeah.
'cause I have a spare room here with 1,000 sex toys in. So
My
it's
goodness.
I have more toys than most shops. And in the future, because there is a museum, erotic museum in Barcelona, and they told me always keep the boxes because it's going to be worth so much money, my collection in let's say 20 or 30
Yeah.
years. So I'm going to keep everything. But what excites me is seeing something I've not seen before. Because people have asked me, do you really need 1,000 toys? Well, I don't need, well, that's they're all from work, but I'm excited about, seeing a new way of experiencing pleasure and it's constantly evolving. That's what's so exciting about our industry. Where do you see the future of our industry in terms of um
Like
usability?
technology.
Yeah, technology or
Yeah. I mean, it would, I'm hesitant to say it, but I do think there'll be some AI
mm,
type connection, whether that's, body dynamic type of, sort
mm,
of sensing and response to your
mm,
body that's somewhat more automatic. I think
mm,
that might be, I think that's like a very a high potential. And then we're already starting to see reactive
mm,
movies and like video content and oral
mm,
content. So you can sort of like react and watch and feel like you're in a sex scene.
mm,
Has this sort of like 3D quality about it. I think that will continue too. And I mean,
mm,
like long term, I think it's like kind of only realistic long term to, I mean, robots of some
mm,
kind. I think, more and more sort of human-ish looking robots is probably also, I think, realistic to imagine long term.
mm. Wow, amazing. Also,
What do you think?
what do I think? I
I'd love
actually
to hear
wrote,
what you think.
years ago, I wrote this article for a Spanish newspaper called, Sex Toys of the Future. And I kind of made up all this stuff. I said, I'm in my country house. I've got a few gray hairs. I open the window. A drone is coming with the new delivery. And that's happening these days. There are drones delivering stuff. And I just made up this really weird, all these weird, like a toy that was kind of like Play-Doh, but you could kind of make your own shape. There was something like that a few years ago that wasn't very safe, but it was kind of like a toy that you could kind of mold into different shapes. You could have like a long as a wand, or then kind of make it small like a pebble. It was a very weird. Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
so. I mean, the idea is amazing because then you can kind of really get it to your anatomy. But it, in
Yes.
that's the thing because people. That's the thing about you can have great ideas, but how do they really work? So. But I think
Yeah.
something like that, the customizable, toys is going to be something that's going to be quite interesting. I think it was like Clone a Willy, but
Yeah.
like more kind of, but more sophisticated. That type of.
Yeah.
So in terms of
Yeah. Maybe
shape.
even things that like link to more, I feel like there might be more like different senses involved, like
Mm,
auditory along with touch, or
mm,
like different ways to amplify or increase pleasure,
mm,
especially in, I feel like, who knows, maybe in partnered experiences also, but I feel like in solo experiences, I feel like those will really get next
mm.
level.
What I think is really interesting as well is the evolution of sex toys is that the growth of, let's say, wearables interacting with the partner, it's not just about the orgasm, it's about the tease and the connection. And I think
Yes.
that's a really amazing thing that's, because I remember when I started using sex toys, there were rabbits and everyone was thinking, oh, I don't need that. I've got a boyfriend, as if it was replacing the person, which I think attitudes
Right.
have really changed these days. Mm,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's silly to, I don't, I feel like sex toys are like whipped cream or chocolate sauce on
mm,
top of something else. It's not like I don't know, my partner and I use sex toys in just about every experience we have. And just
mm,
because it magnifies the experience,
mm,
makes it fun, easier, more, I don't know,
mm,
like more intimate or more ways to explore, or
mm,
just like, I mean, like, I don't know. I think it's just fun. Like, I think it's
mm,
like like a dinner menu, you're just adding
mm.
more options.
Yes, a few years ago, I designed a sex toy, and I remember when I received the first prototype, I felt a lot of pressure to actually like it because I was putting my name to it, and yeah, it was really hard because I was getting my best fantasies out, and it's like and then I had to get make a few adjustments. But if you've experienced something like that when you're testing a toy, it's like you really want to like it, but there's something not right, and then you think about the implications of that, and that's not sexy. It's getting you,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, I think, even though I haven't had like my personal name on something in
Mm,
the same way that, you're talking about, but it does, I mean, you do feel like somewhat responsible,
mm, yeah.
like you feel a little responsible because, you were part of this design process.
Mm, definitely. So, a couple of questions I ask all of my guests. What is the book that changed your life? Do you read books?
Yes, yes, yes.
Uh,
I'm like trying to think. Um, I mean, I really like The Good Earth. I don't know if that's like a Pearl Buck. I don't know if that's like so. I don't know. I just remember reading that at a pretty young age and it really making a big impression. Catcher in the Rye. I feel like that's like a classic. There is a book I really love and I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm gonna have to come back to it, but it's so good. It's a short, like small book.
mhm,
Ugh, no, I'm so bummed out. I'll text you when I remember it. But yeah, those are off the top of my head,
mm.
Those The Four Agreements. I don't know
Oh,
if
I
you've
love
ever
that.
read
Yeah.
that book.
Yeah.
Four Agreements, Alchemist. That's
Mm,
an amazing book.
mm,
But yeah, yeah, I love to read books. I think more so than watching television. I think they're impressionable in your
mm,
mind because you get to make,
mm,
right? You get to imagine the characters and the story, and it's always
yeah,
a little better, I think, than the movie.
definitely. What about a quote that you live by?
In the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make.
Oh, I love it. That should be like a slogan, a brand slogan or
Paul
something.
McCartney.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
Yes.
And where can people find
Yeah.
you?
You could find our brands on social media. So
Mhm.
bvibe_social and Lawan Massager and Ride the Cowgirl.
Cool. Amazing. So, Alicia Sinclair, thank you so much for joining us on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Right back at you.
The book I'm reading now is Good Girls Gossip: Find Your Female Power. And this is by Tova Lee. And she will be coming on the podcast very soon. And I think she's the first guest who will have a second interview on here. But this will actually be the fourth time that we speak. I came across Tova Lee in 2020 and she interviewed me for her podcast. And it was it was a very interesting experience because we had both collaborated on a campaign by Lilo for Masturbation May. So I knew of her from that context. But as she's a mummy blogger and I'm child-free, I assumed that our topics were very different, but I kind of knew that she was someone who I could, who was trustworthy and of high quality just because we were on the same campaign with Lilo. And Lilo is a luxury sex toy brand, a luxury pleasure product brand. Anyway, after the Lilo collaboration, when she reached out to me, I just said yes because I knew of her name, but I didn't really know what she did in great depth. And we had an interview, and it was when I was just getting over Bell's palsy. So I was a bit self-conscious about my face. My face was not quite normal. I didn't really want to smile or laugh and joke because it would be really obvious that my smile was wonky. And yeah, I was super self-conscious. So I did the interview, and I think she thought I was quite serious because I had this kind of serious face. Obviously I couldn't really smile. But then later on, I discovered her. I saw one of her books on Amazon, and it's called Fucked at 40. And I read the blurb of it and I was like, oh my God, I need to speak to this woman again because it just looked like she was way more interesting and we had a lot more in common, or let's say topics that were maybe different perspectives, but there was a lot to discuss. And it's interesting because the cover of Fucked at 40, she has this kind of like half smile on one side of her face. And that was what I was doing naturally because I had Bell's palsy. And I've already shared my Bell's palsy story on here many times, but just a little bit of context is that I got so down when I discovered not anxiety styles, attachment styles. And I realized that my situation of being a child-free single woman might not have been a choice, but rather a consequence of childhood circumstances. And that really struck a chord with me that made me feel so down, so depressed. And then I woke up one day and I had Bell's palsy, and it was just so depressing. But what really grabbed my attention of Fucked at 40 is that in the blurb, she said that she had everything that women are supposed to want. That is to say, the husband who's not shagging the secretary, and the children and the house in suburbia and the dogs and everything's perfect, but she still felt lost. And I was feeling lost because I hadn't really followed these rites of passage that we're supposed to do in life, such as get married and have children and watch your children grow up, etc. Because when you're not on the path, you can feel quite lost, especially if there are not many role models. And I realized that it doesn't really matter if you're on the path or no path or just making it all up. I think we all feel lost to some degree. So that sparked my interest in speaking with Tova again. And I wanted to interview her for my YouTube channel. And at this time, I wasn't an interviewer. I didn't have a podcast, but I wanted to discuss female life choices, women's life choices, such as to get married or not, child freedom, motherhood, and our relationship to our bodies, after whether having children or not. So that was it was so enlightening, this conversation that we had. And then I interviewed her again for this podcast about confessions. She had a book called You Did What? And it was really interesting as well. So now, Good Girls Gossip, I thought, what a great opportunity to reach out again. Third time, I'll be interviewing her. Fourth time, we're going to speak. And I must confess, when I first saw the title Gossip, that kind of, there was a bit of a red flag for me because I really hate gossip. And that's something that I don't like about female friendship, is that sometimes, this is also, I'm responsible for this. These situations that I'm complaining about, I do take responsibility. But often in female friendships, I think there's a lot of emphasis on sharing, struggles. And that can be a really good thing, to offload and feel supported by another female and talk about emotional things. But then I also find that discretion is not always part of that. And sometimes things are just not, secrets are not kept, they're repeated. And then also when I think of gossip, the word gossip, I think of bad mouthing and just talking too much about things which, and gossip can kind of help people bond. If there are some statistics I've seen about this, when two people gossip, there is some kind of like dopamine hit, something like, oh, we're talking about the same person. But when you're around someone like that, they're doing the same with you. It's really important to acknowledge that. So I've really tried to be mindful in my own dealings with female friends to resist the temptation to fall into gossip. And when I say gossip, I'm talking about what we understand by the word gossip, which would be, repeating things which are private and a bit of bad mouthing as well. But actually, when I started reading this book, Good Girls Gossip by Tove Lo, it just had a very different definition of gossip. And it was more about, and then she talks about the linguistic origin of this word. And it was more about their female connection, the female camaraderie, where women come together and they share diet tips or emotional struggles or, just lifestyle things, I suppose, and support, beauty tips, diet tips, all this kind of thing. So that was what the emphasis was. And I think it's something beautiful about female support and female friendships and about having real conversations. And sometimes I've seen that with men, for example. This is a massive, massive generalization. But I know a lot of men who are unable to have meaningful conversations with friends where conversations revolve around things like football, or nothing wrong with that. But sometimes if you're struggling, it's nice to know that you can open up to someone and find that support. My issue with that is just what happens afterwards when things are repeated. And I have had to extract myself from groups where confidences were not respected and they were repeated. And also I've seen it with other people. I remember once I was in a taxi with a friend and she said to me, "Don't tell anyone, but last night, la 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 la." And I was thinking, well, so-and-so, our common friend, already told me this last night, actually, just after it happened when you told her. So I just thought, wow, I better be careful about what I'm telling and who to. And it was really weird because I had a psychic reading with, what was his name again? I had a psychic on here. Something called Stroud. I can't remember his name now. Anyway, there's a celebrity psychic that I interviewed for this podcast. And I was going to do the same thing I'd done with Colby Rebel, which was in, I think, 2021, where I had and Colby Rebel is a award-winning psychic. And I interviewed her for this podcast and I asked her for 30-minute interview plus 15-minute reading. I didn't listen to the reading back for a long time and I realized she got everything right. It was so incredible and so juicy. So I wanted to do the same thing with this guy called Quentin Stroud. That was his name. So we had this interview and I didn't end up publishing or the actual reading because it just got so personal. I thought this is a bit too much. But one thing he did say to me is that your friends are going to disappoint you. And I was thinking, no way. I have this solid group of female friends. But the same day I went out with these female friends and one of them just dropped a bombshell and had repeated something that was very private to me to some more people. And I was like, whoa. And I just couldn't believe it. And it just, I just observed secrets from other people being repeated as well. And it was just really hard for me. And sometimes I've had to, really bite my tongue. And sometimes when things are bothering me, I've had to keep things to myself and not express them because I just didn't want to be the person who was gossiping in the sense of, bad mouthing someone or even sharing secrets that, instead of actually having the guts and to actually confront someone. Oh my God, this is so annoying. Instead of having the guts to actually confront the person who you're upset with, going to someone else to complain about it. This is so cowardly. And I'm kind of have been guilty about this myself. But then I had a more recent situation which made me reevaluate how I looked upon this. There was someone who had really disappointed me, someone else actually, who wanted me to be quiet about my wins because it was making them feel bad. And I thought, if I can't have friends who cheerlead for me, what's the point, And I wanted to, I was really suffering with this because I felt quite unsupported, quite alone. And I actually told another friend about it. And I thought, well, if I'm living a certain situation, I want to be able to share how I'm feeling and get the support. This doesn't replace actually dealing with the person who has caused that discomfort and being honest. And I had done that, so I ticked that box. So my how would I say, my conscience is clear in that sense. So now I have a kind of different, a more kind of compassionate understanding of that need to offload if someone's upsetting you somehow. As long as you actually, are communicating to that person who's upset you that they have upset you, because sometimes we're not all mind readers, and we all have blind spots, myself included. But for me now, I feel that I do kind of like, what I like about male friendships sometimes is I find that they are more trustworthy with these types of private things. And I like the fact that we can talk about ideas rather than people, because there is an expression, small minds talk about people, mediocre minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. So I kind of like have a more idea space with friends. And I'm very mindful about the way I speak of third parties when they're not there to defend themselves. I think that's a good skill to have, but that doesn't replace if you are suffering from someone's actions, you should be able to share it, but always in a way that's not really about, not in a bitchy way, but more kind of maybe just not knowing. So I have a few friends who are super diplomatic, and I know that I can share certain things without it coming across as being gossip in the common sense or the common understanding of that word. Yeah, so female friendships is something that a bit of a sore point for me right now. But recently I've been attracting more kind of cerebral females rather than kind of very emotional ones, which has been good. But I've also been, noticing my own patterns. And I tend to bring a lot of intensity to female friendships. And then it will kind of it burns out quite quickly, and then I get to a situation where I'm just no longer feeling comfortable around certain people. But also I've put up with a lot of people repeating my secrets, which is not cool, and also some kind of passive aggression remarks about life choices, about my personal life, about my job, about my relationships and things like that. And I've actually that's really annoying. And something that I really hate, which before I go on to the next part of this podcast, is that I have an online presence. Obviously, that's why I'm here, and I do talk a lot about things in my personal life that that can be converted into life lessons, such as this particular monologue or review of this book. But there is a part of me which is totally offline, and it's strictly offline. And there are friends of mine who know more about me than the things that I don't publish. And then when they tell someone, a third party, about the things that are very private to me, and then this third party person can go to my Instagram and know all of this stuff about me when I'm a public figure, that for me is such a breach of trust. So it just goes to show that the more public you become, the more sacred your private life is. So now I'm really mindful about who I'm sharing stuff with, because I've had people reach out to me that I don't even know saying, "Oh, I'm friends with so and so. I've heard all about you." And I'm thinking, "What have you heard about me?" so it's really interesting territory, and I really can't wait to actually discuss all of this with Tovali. And she's going to be on. I'm going to speak to her in a few days, and she'll be on just later this month. So I'm so excited to actually uncover all of these concerns of mine about female friendship and see what she has to say, because obviously she's just written this book that's celebrating female power, and I really want to kind of see how she feels about the negative side of it and how we can deal with these people who repeat intimate details of people's lives, etc. And also girl code. I think that's really important as well. I mean, I know lots of girl code, that might be another different monologue, but that's something that's a bit of a sensitive point for me as well. So I am starting to read this Good Girls gossip, and it's interesting about female friendships. And just the bit that I read this morning was about women, how we kind of how women maybe put themselves last when they go through motherhood or relationships, and that's something that I have observed a lot in other people, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm glad I don't have children. Actually, I do want to be the protagonist of my life, but there is something that in women, that we have this nurturing energy that sometimes we can erase ourselves, and this is the premise of the coaching program that I am developing now called the 8 Pillars of Self-Love, which is so perfect for women who are putting themselves last. Yes. So, So anyway, it's good to have those female support systems. But of course, choose wisely and remember, don't gossip in a kind of bitchy way, and be supportive, and call people out when they are talking badly about others or repeating secrets. That's what I think. So that is the book I'm reading now, Good Girls Gossip by Tova Lee. Now it's time for this episode's meditation. Please don't listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. I am worthy of deep, fulfilling pleasure. I celebrate my erotic aliveness. I am safe in my sensual expression. Pleasure is my birthright. I honor my body and its desires. I am open to receiving sacred pleasure. I am grateful for my sexuality. I am worthy of deep, fulfilling pleasure. I celebrate my erotic aliveness. My sexuality is powerful and beautiful. I trust my body's wisdom. I am in tune with my sensual energy. I allow myself to fully enjoy intimacy. I am grateful for my sexuality. I am worthy of deep, fulfilling pleasure. I celebrate my erotic aliveness. I am free to feel, express, and enjoy. I release shame and embrace joy. My body is a temple of pleasure. I am connected to my sensual essence. I am grateful for my sexuality. I am worthy of deep, fulfilling pleasure. I celebrate my erotic aliveness. My sensual energy is a source of creativity and power. I surrender to the joy of embodied pleasure. I am soft, open, and unapologetically turned on. I invite deep intimacy with myself and others. I am grateful for my sexuality. I am worthy of deep, fulfilling pleasure. I celebrate my erotic aliveness. Every breath awakens my pleasure. I am fully present in my body. I radiate sexual confidence. My pleasure expands with ease and flow. I am grateful for my sexuality. Are you looking to strengthen your pelvic floor in a fun and engaging way? Introducing PeriFit, the pelvic floor trainer that combines biofeedback with interactive video games. With PeriFit, you can track your progress and improve your pelvic health while playing video games with your vagina on your smartphone. It's easy, effective, and more importantly, it's fun. And for a limited time, get 25% off with the code Venus15 at checkout. That's perifit.co and use the code Venus15 for 25% off. The link is also in the show notes. Disclaimer: consult your healthcare provider before starting any new fitness program. To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram. The Orgasmic Lifestyle is also on Substack and YouTube, where you can watch all the interviews with our experts. All the links are in the show notes below. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.